Well, let's talk first about the devastating fire at Grenfell Tower. Families trapped in their homes, really upsetting scenes. Now, the government has, of course, been criticised for its response. Warnings about fire safety ignored, potentially by the council or the developers. People are right to be angry, aren't they?
I think that's right. I think people are right to have concerns and want to seek answers to all of those questions. There's a huge number of questions involved here. And the role of the government is not only to provide the immediate support in support of the local council and the emergency services, but also Theresa May, of course, has announced the setting up of a full public inquiry which will look at so many of the other longer-term questions in relation to building, fire safety, the role of the different authorities, and so on.
The thing is, people want reassurance much quicker than that, don't they? I mean, you represent a neighbouring constituency. You have high-rises in your constituency.
I do, yeah.
You're a father yourself. If you were living, in the 20th floor of a high-rise, putting your kids to bed, would you feel safe right now?
Well, that is precisely why we are taking the action immediately. There is a police-led investigation in conjunction with the Fire, the Health and Safety Executive. It's worth pointing out, however, we still don't actually know the cause of the fire. We're hoping to have that in the next couple of days.
We don't know the cause, but we know something went horrifically wrong when you look at the building. I mean, how can you give any reassurance to people who are worried about their family's safety?
Because we're undertaking an urgent inspection of other tower blocks. There's 2,500 such tower blocks in the country. The Department for Local Government and Communities has been in touch with, has tried to contact 166 local authorities, the leading housing associations. There's an urgent programme of inspection underway. But I would stress that until we actually know the precise cause of the fire at Grenfell Tower, then a lot of this, of course, is speculation as to what might have prevented the terrible tragedy. But the most important thing is to get to the bottom of it and to take the action as quickly as we possibly can.
Speed, of course, is the essence. Theresa May has said that the immediate response to help those families, those people affected, simply wasn't good enough. And many people will look at her own reaction and say, actually, that wasn't good enough either. Why did it take her so long to meet with victims?
Well, I think you have to understand, and of course we're right, the immediate reaction wasn't good enough, particularly in the local area, particularly with victims, particularly with others who were affected. However, the fire wasn't actually brought under control until 1 a.m. on Thursday morning. Later that same morning, Theresa May visited the site, spoke to the emergency services. It was still very much at that point an emergency services, emergency situation. She also went to the local hospital in my constituency, the Chelsea and Westminster Hospital, to visit those who were injured. And she's had two further meetings with residents, both on Thursday and Friday and Saturday, to talk with local residents. And you'll have seen a very, very long meeting at Number 10 tomorrow. The Prime Minister feels this very, very closely. The Prime Minister is very, very much involved. She's chaired the meetings to seek to deal with the immediate response. The Prime Minister is very personally affected by this disaster. Is
there a risk, though, that this tragedy is at risk of highlighting what some people would perceive to be her weaknesses, not showing a natural empathy when she meets people, not being able to think quickly on her feet, to be blunt, seeming a bit cold?
Well, I don't accept that, actually, because she's responded on 4 separate occasions with either visits to the site, the local community, the hospital. She's had the residents in. So I don't accept that at all. What I do accept is that the response in the first hours, the first day, was not as good as it should have been.
What should have been different?
Well, I think we should have had more people on the ground and people more visible. I visited the local area on Thursday lunchtime, and there was people putting in incredible efforts. I saw a lot of the local councillors out and about, a lot of council officials. I saw the Red Cross out and about. I saw victim support out and about. There was a big effort, but I just think perhaps we should have put more people in more immediately, particularly on the first day in a more high visibility role.
Let's talk about what happens next, the government's response to the situation right now. This is what the Housing Minister, Alok Sharma, said on Thursday, which was the government will guarantee, hopefully it should be appearing on our screen soon, what he did say was the government will guarantee that every single family from Grenfell Tower will be rehoused in the local area. So can you guarantee that every single family affected will be rehoused in that borough?
Yes.
in the same borough?
Within the local area, within the borough of Kensington, Chelsea, or neighbouring boroughs within 3 weeks.
Because for many people, they don't see that as being in the local area. If you're being asked to move to a different borough, which may have different schools, different council tax, that's not the same.
Well, we've also said that we will pay for all of the costs that any resident would have by moving slightly further away, for example, any cost of having to go to school in the immediate term, all of these things. We've laid on a £5 million fund for the victims, for those immediately affected, to cover these kind of costs precisely for those kind of reasons.
So you can't guarantee then that they will be housed in the same borough?
I'm saying that they'll be housed in Kensington, Chelsea or the neighbouring boroughs within 3 weeks. That is a guarantee given by the Prime Minister in conjunction with the local council.
Let's talk about some of the wider issues, because I think some of the things that are so difficult to fathom about the fire is that some of these warnings were already there. Let's talk about sprinklers, for example. Since 2006, all new properties have had to have sprinklers fitted. And after the fire in Camberwell, the coroner recommended that the government looks at making sure that older properties are retrofitted with sprinklers. So why hasn't that happened? Why is it that if you're in a newer property, you've got a more chance of surviving a fire than an older one?
Well, we have responded to all of the recommendations following the coroner's report in Lakanal House in Southwark. All of those recommendations we wrote to local authorities specifically on the subject of sprinklers. But clearly this...
You wrote to local authorities, but in some ways that's not the same, is it? You could have
part of the public inquiry to look at these questions, Sophie. At the moment, we don't actually know in this specific case if sprinklers would have made a difference, because we don't yet know the cause of the fire and some of the consequences of the fire. It's really important that we have that before we jump to conclusions about alleviation methods that could be taken.
There's also the question of cladding, and I accept, of course, that we don't know the full reasons for the fire, why it spread, but there has been a lot of questions about the cladding on Grenfell Tower, and reports that it's banned in the US on buildings over 40 foot. In Germany, Denmark, Slovakia, the Czech Republic, Poland and Serbia, buildings above a certain height must also only contain non-combustible products. So is our health and safety worse than Serbia?
Well, that is part of the immediate investigation, is to look at the cladding. And I totally understand people's desire to have answers to these questions. We all saw the TV coverage on Wednesday of what appeared to be the outside of the building in flames. So it's perfectly natural that people will want to ask these questions and to look at the cladding. However, we do need to look at the specific police investigation into what is the cause of the fire before jumping to the conclusions. What we are doing is we're examining the cladding that was actually used on the building and also how it was attached, which is also a key part of that question. That is part of the urgent investigation that is underway. That won't wait for the public inquiry in terms of whether the cladding played a key role in this fire.
Are there any questions about whether that cladding shouldn't have been used under UK law as well?
Well, that's my understanding that the cladding that was reported is also not in accordance with UK building regulations, the cladding that was as reported. However, what we do need to find out is precisely what cladding was used and how it was attached. And that is the purpose, one of the purposes of the urgent investigation led by the police in conjunction with the fire service and the health and safety executive.
At times this week, Theresa May, the Prime Minister, has looked like a bit of a broken woman. Do you feel sorry for her?
No, I don't think that's true. I've seen Theresa May chairing the meetings, chairing the government's response, very much in control of the situation, directing efforts, a wide host of agencies involved, the fire service, the police, the Mayor of London.
She's looked pretty shaken at other times, though. For example, when she had to be bundled into her car after a meeting at a church with the cries of coward ringing in her ears.
I think it's totally understandable that somebody is showing the human reaction of what is a major disaster. The London Fire Brigade described this to me when I visited the site as the nearest thing London has had to 9/11. That, if you like, is the magnitude of this disaster. So it's understandable that people are angry, but it's also the Prime Minister is in charge of the situation, directing efforts, and of course is personally affected by the disaster.
Now, there are reports this morning that MPs on your party and your backbenchers have given Theresa May 10 days to turn it around, and some are preparing to write letters of no confidence in her leadership. Is it only a matter of time?
I don't recognise that. I've not heard this. And what I did see on Monday when Theresa May addressed the whole parliamentary party in the House of Commons was a party united and in support of our Prime Minister, getting on with the job, delivering a programme for government, which we will see on Wednesday in the Queen's speech, starting the Brexit talks tomorrow. There is a lot going on, dealing with the consequences and dealing with the immediacy of the Grenfell Tower fire. All of these things, of course, that's quite a lot in the in tray, but the Prime Minister's getting on with it.
You say that your party's united behind the Prime Minister. Is the reason for that really because they're so worried about Jeremy Corbyn and what would happen if there was another election?
Well, I don't accept that. I mean, Jeremy Corbyn, after all, lost the election. We do have more than 50
You didn't win it, though, did you?
More than Jeremy Corbyn. We have formed a government and we're looking forward to presenting a programme in the Queen's speech and doing what the British people want us to do, which is to get on delivering for them, particularly in relation to the Grenfell Tower fire, but on Brexit and all these other incidents.
You talk about Brexit. Let's talk a bit about your job as the Minister for International Trade, because tomorrow your boss, Liam Fox, is going to be pushing trade deals with the US. At the same time, David Davis, the Brexit Secretary, is going to be kicking off those talks in Brussels. I mean, is that a little bit like, you know, starting a new relationship, planning your wedding with your new girlfriend before you've actually sorted out your divorce with your current partner?
Well, no, I don't accept that, because what we do need to do, you're quite right, we cannot sign any trade deals until we're outside of the European Union, but we do need to prepare the ground to scope out those trade deals, have those discussions. And of course, the United States is our single largest trading partner. It's an incredibly important trading relationship. 1 million people in Britain go to work every day for US companies. In the United States, 1 million people go to work for UK companies. It's really important that we have a very strong trading relationship with both with the United States, with the European Union, I might add, and also beyond.
Now, Theresa May, of course, called this election to try and increase her mandate for Brexit. She ended up losing seats. As a result of that, are you going to change your vision for leaving the European Union as a result, listening to what the public appear to have said in that election? Well,
government policy remains unchanged. And you've also got to remember, Sophie, that the Labour Party also stood on a platform of leaving the single market and more
Well,
than
they said the statement was that the UK
the Labour Party's
would
position has moved around
market.
a little bit, but the actual manifesto said leaving the single market. So more than 80% of people voted for parties that were pledged to do that. We are getting on with what we've said we would do. The Prime Minister's speech back in January, the letter to Donald Tusk, the government's white paper, we have laid out in quite a lot of detail the particular course that we want to take in relation to Brexit. But, you know, these are negotiations. You cannot say precisely what the destination will be, but we have laid out clearly what we want to do in these talks.
OK. Greg Hands, thanks very much for speaking to us today.
Thank you.